Hello and welcome to FP Direct. I'm Farooq Batafi. And today we are going to talk about a very important development in South Asia. Before that, let me also welcome those of you who haven't actually subscribed to my channel. And let me request you to actually start following it. Subscribe button is down there. You can very easily subscribe to this. My purpose is to ensure on this channel, FB Direct has been created only to ensure that my international audience also gets some kind of content. That's why the language is going to be English as well. I might from time to time upload other language videos as well, but this is primarily about my international audience. So today, what I'm going to talk about is India Canada row, and unfortunately, I kept on waiting that the Indian media is going to talk about it in a sane manner and try to comprehend what exactly is going on and how much damage is being done, and perhaps they are going to, correct that direction. They haven't. So unfortunately, because of that, I have to step in and I have to, warn my Indian friends that you are making a big mistake, and this mistake can easily be corrected, right? And I say this with a heavy heart. I'm rooting for India, that India eventually finds its place in the world as well. But for that to happen, you have to realize that all time discussion, populist politics, and all this muscular angling on television elsewhere is not going to help you at all. So, what we know about this, there's this gentleman who was, a Sikh citizen, and who was apparently wanted by India. And Canada has now actually stepped up and said that, he was assassinated by Indian intelligence, right? This kind of activity is known in the region, in South Asia, but there are many accusations of suspected murders that might be linked to Indian intelligence. But usually, what happens is that such policies are not pursued in the West, right? In the West, of course, particularly in democracies, it is thought that you are going to actually respect the rule of law, and that is how things actually improve, and you move, take it from there. So now Justin Trudeau actually came up with this a claim that he has almost, implicating evidence of India's involvement in such an episode, right? And that man, that Canadian man who was Sikh and could be associated with Sikh nationalism or activism, was actually assassinated by India's intelligence agencies operating on Canadian soil, right? Now, the biggest problem when you look at the whole thing is that people are thinking that India is so influential and India might be able to stay its ground, keep on, continue this muscular posturing, and eventually things will go hunky dory. This time it is not the case. Canada is not an ordinary country. You might think that it has the habit of underplaying its importance. So it is not important. It is very important country. One, it is part of the Five Eyes alliance, or intelligence coalition. Well, there are five countries that are in it: the US itself, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And these countries actually routinely don't spy on each other, and they cooperate totally with each other as well. Now, India's image today and the birth that India has in the West and its community has in the West has been because of certain things. Of course, Indians are very capable. Wherever they have gone, their diaspora has contributed to that country. There's no two thoughts about it, right? And if I say otherwise, it will be stupid, and it will be akin to making fun of your intelligence. That is not right. I think they're very capable, but other countries also have very capable people who go abroad and who actually become part of those countries, but don't actually rise to the top. India's diaspora and India's closeness with the West started back in 1990s, right? And how did it start? Because the Cold War had ended, and of course, everybody was talking about various things that this country or that program or that group, they are going to come after the West. Along came Huntington's Clash of Civilizations. I think it is lying somewhere around here, right? Clash of Civilizations, and in that book it was claimed that the future is going to be a conflict between, West, which Huntington actually insisted is not universal, and it is going to be with the Muslims and China, or Confucius civilization. He has very nebulous definition of civilization. I don't want to go into that long debate for now. I will in the future. But that actually set the stage. And at that time, when he gave his lecture, and it was to American Enterprise Institute. Amazingly, that institute is a conservative institute, and Huntington was a card-carrying liberal. But he gave that lecture, and then that was actually summarized for Foreign Affairs. In Foreign Affairs, the editor at that time was Fareed Zakaria, the same gentleman who does program called GPS, Fareed Zakaria GPS on CNN. But the same gentleman, actually, the gentleman who was the editor, was of Indian origin and has actually been a very strong advocate of India's mainstreaming as well. But Huntington wrote this. Depressed identities, political identities like Muslims, China at that time also so-called Confucius civilization. There are the so-called civilizations. I use so-called not in disrespect of those communities, but in disrespect of the definition that Huntington uses, right? But that was a time when a lot of people inhaled Huntington's propaganda. And then one man called Osama bin Laden stands up and starts attacking the West, and immediately people start thinking that, excuse me, I have some throat problem, but I will continue if you can tolerate it. So Huntington is people think Huntington is proven right, and at that time the thought actually started circulating in policy circles that China might be the next challenger because Muslims are not as a political entity. They don't have a powerful country. They can resort to terrorism, but if you want to actually focus on powerful countries, India, China had at that time it had not crossed 1 billion threshold. I think I cannot be too sure, but it was the most populous country in the world, and then it was rising as well. So it was thought that there will always be, it will be better that there should be a counterweight to it. And India was immediately actually mainstreamed. At that time, India's economy was also in the gutter. And then two things happen. One, India establishes embassy in Israel, and India also, because these two countries were like known to have Muslim insurgents in their midst, so they could cooperate as well. The second thing that happens is that India also starts, fixing its economy, and the West actually helped it a lot. But after that, because India's cooperation with the Western intelligence agencies, especially in the war on terror, continued unabated, and it was a very close cooperation. The West actually tried or started to trust India. Various people also got elevated, or they got opportunity to become mainstream in the Western policy making circles. Many rose to power, many rose to various circles of influence, and that was a rightful thing to do, I think, because India's population is not small, and Indians are very good with education, so they have been successful elsewhere as well. But this competition continued, and now after Donald Trump came, and at that time, America's outlook very quickly changed. Right, America became very skeptical of its allies as well, and by this time, Indian diaspora has acquired a lot of power too, or influence too. So India is something that is criticized a lot, but especially Modi's tenure. But even then, they think that this is an essential country that you have to work with, and it is a democracy. Of course, it has been a procedural democracy since the very inception, barring Indira Gandhi's emergency. So they have to work with it, right? But Donald Trump was such a big shock to the international system that overall worldview about various countries has shifted or changed. Modi might have benefited at that time from that kind of situation, but international media has kept a close eye on what is going in India. Various publications of note, papers of record like New York Times have been following what Modi is doing right and what he is doing wrong. But this cooperation essentially flourished because the Five Eyes intelligence agencies thought that India is a trustworthy country and they should be working with the nation, right? But in the meantime, this continues that India is becoming bullish. India's intelligence community is getting aggressive as well, and for a long time, especially because China is very rapidly rising as well. This is what they keep on tolerating. But along comes, this war, Ukraine war, and there India has actually tried to balance its position, and the West has started, reevaluating whether India can be trusted. One gentleman who is of Indian origin called Ashley Tellis was among the earliest advocates in America that India should be an ally and it should work. Both countries should work closely. Now, Ashley Tellis says that India cannot be trusted when it comes to containing China, and in Russia's case also, it is not very reliable partner. All of this is going on, and then this episode happens, right? So you have lost because nobody wants anybody else to actually tread on their turf, and Canada essentially is part of Five Eyes, and it is a very important country. Remember, I'm not even talking in terms of economy. Let us see two very recent developments. One, when Huawei, yeah, right, the Chinese company, the Chinese multi-billion, actually over 100 billion giant, right? They were still, conducting their businesses in the West, but then in one country, Canada, Canada actually apprehends the CFO of Huawei, right? After that, we have seen that intelligence community started talking about ZTE, Huawei, a couple of other companies, and since then, Huawei has lost its footprint in essentially Five Eyes countries, particularly, and then also in many other democracies as well. There's one thing that is very important to remember. The second one, when after COVID, actually in the last days of COVID, there were lockdowns going on. Americas and the adjoining regions, truckers actually went to where? To Canada to stage protest. And when there were negotiations, and eventually they ended that strike. At that time, all over the world, somehow magically, lockdowns actually disappeared as well. So with that kind of influential powers, you don't mess, right? And this was, of course, a clear validation. India can compare its quote unquote privilege with the privileges that are enjoyed by Israel or a couple of other countries, but that won't work. This time, that won't work because I haven't seen anything like this kind of pissed offness in the past. It was actually focused on other countries like Pakistan, various other countries in that region, but not towards India. This time it is so. So, what happens now? Is there going to be fireworks? Are there going to be fireworks or are there going to be sanctions and stuff like that? No, nothing of the sort. But what you lose is the privilege that you had cultivated in the last 25 years. It can be quick, it can be gradual, but at this moment, because it is thought that in the next election also, Narendra Modi is going to come to power again. Economists actually called it Shuen right, recently in this week's Leaders. But it then also stands to reason that if Modi government continues, and it will, then Modi government's policies will continue in the same fashion. So if that is happening and if India is changing, why not insulate yourself from India's influence? Because this can happen again and again. There are lawmakers that have taken similar kind of concerns regarding a Sikh family in UK. There are others also. Muslims are already, very critical. Christians, especially of Indian religion, are also very critical of Modi's policies. So, if that happens, remember, it took India 25 years to build this influence, but it hasn't actually reached where it had to. So all this reliance on Western technology, cooperation with intelligence, access to various policy making bodies internationally by not only diaspora but their own, favorites as well. That can stop. It can stop in 6 months, 1 year. And if they see that these policies, these abrasive, aggressive, muscular policies are going to continue in next 25 years, next 5 years, sorry, 25 is a long time, next 5 years, then the West very gradually or very quickly, possibly as well. We have seen some very quick examples. Before occupation of Kuwait, Saddam Hussein was the West's favorite actor in the region, but all of a sudden he occupies Kuwait, and we saw that the entire world actually, um, uh, you know, rallied against him, and then we saw what became of him. India is not Iraq. India's government, which is, whether you like it or not, is democratically elected, is not Saddam Hussein. But all I'm saying is that never think that if containment of China and Russia are the main concerns, then the third regional influencer, India, will have to be kept in your pocket. That argument can very quickly change based on two aspects. One, how democratic or how culturally, relevant or compatible India is, whether it shares the values with the West or not, right? And these days, of course, because of the Western media's coverage of Indian politics and this sadness, especially about how India is changing, that has actually seeped in. So that is a concern or question that might be there. Second thing is whether India can be relied to contain China or Russia. That is a big question as well. Remember that India might say that it might eventually contain China, but they share borders and they also have humongous, trade. So, do you think that it is likely that India is going to do exactly that? India is going to contain China. No country, to my knowledge, wants its immediate neighborhood to be fighting all the time, fighting with that, right? I know Cortelia's philosophy that you can fight your neighbors, but their neighbor's neighbor should be a friend. That continues. But China is a big regional player, and India benefits from working with China as well. So India cannot actually continue. This argument very quickly can be built, and I've seen it being built by Ashley Tellis, no one else, right? So is it not prudent to take a step back now? How? And by the way, if India doesn't, there are going to be internal ramifications as well, because there are assumptions about who Modi is, how he came to power, and all. So if India doesn't take a step back, all hell can break loose. This can be the seminal moment when the West actually starts finally thinking that proverbial the emperor has no clothes moment, right? But of course, other countries have similar kind of complications as well. And if you are going to frame India, other Western allies can also be framed in one way or the other. And Indian media has been doing it for quite some time. The second aspect is that eventually India, can find itself in a dock where it is mentioned along with countries that are not considered democratic. It will not be useful for India, right? So what do? You cooperate with Canada. You identify the culprits who might be exporting this kind of activities in Canada. And if there is culpability, there is proof of some kind of cooperation, some kind of illicit activity, then identify the people. Usually they are not very high ups, although the uh, purported intelligence that the West has, we hear, indicates towards the top of Indian policy making machinery, not essentially Modi, but somebody around him. But regardless, it is usually easy to actually sacrifice a pawn, right? Uh, and that can be done. Somebody can be punished. You kept Colonel Purohit and other Swami Asim Anand behind bars for quite some time, and then you made them heroes. Arresting somebody of this sort and punishing them with some kind of punishment is not a very difficult thing. But that, unfortunately, to me, doesn't seem to be happening. Why? Because India's bullish posture is because of its A, business community, B, because of its intelligence community. The intelligence community, usually because they are essentially invested in conflicts, they harden over time. So their attitudes actually become very inflexible. And perhaps that is why, in the end, it was intelligence community to which India's current NSA, that is National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, actually pledged that India's fortunes can be changed. So, and after that, we certainly saw that Modi's government came to power and came to power with such a great influence. So, business community that owns media as well, that has become an echo chamber. That is also because it is owned by the same big businesses that now align with Modi, and all those lines, big businesses that were aligned together, were aligned by India's intelligence agencies. So, for an intelligence agency to take step back when they think they are ascendant in a country is not easy. So, it is unlikely that Modi will want to actually alienate them. And if he doesn't, what will happen is that his international stock will start falling very quickly. And then, of course, it will impact India's international stock as well. And if that happens, in the next election, intelligence agencies will very quickly use and drop unpalatable Narendra Modi, and they'll find some internationally palatable choice and install them for 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. So that kind of a situation is harmful to the current Indian government as well. Whether somebody takes note in Modi's circles or not, I don't know. But I think that this international posturing has done its course. Now, if you want to work with powers that are bigger than you have to start cooperating as well. And Modi can actually establish himself as an international statesman if he works closely with the West and actually wins them over through all these means that I mentioned. Will that happen? I don't know. If it doesn't happen, are there going to be dire consequences? Absolutely. This was today's program. If you haven't actually started following this channel, please do, because I will keep on bringing to you the latest commentary on various international and regional developments. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.